everyone. I'd like to introduce Raghee Horner. Raghee, how are you? Welcome back to
Hey,
F.A.C.E.
good morning. I'm doing well, thanks.
Yeah, it's been too long, Raghee. It's
It
really
has.
nice. Yeah, great to see you. How's things going in Florida?
I don't know. Can you see me? Should I turn video on? I don't know that anybody needs to
How
see me
about
first.
how about sharing your screen?
Oh, okay. No, I meant
Maybe.
let's see. Zoom is
Oh,
always an adventure. So
okay.
I'm doing really well. Great to be here. Great to be
Uh,
here.
okay. So I wanted to, I interviewed you for several years going back to FX Street, but you know what? Yeah, the question I normally ask people, and I really can't remember your story. And before we get to the markets, maybe you could share with us your journey and how you got in the industry. And if you're glad that it happened.
Oh, that's awesome. So I actually started trading covered calls on shares of IBM that I had got from my father. And that was 15 and a half, 16. So
Okay.
that's where everything sort of began. And then, the Forex part's where for me it gets really interesting
Okay.
because bear with me. Because at that point I started developing a whole lot more as a teacher, until then I was teaching a little bit, but not a lot. And I see you got the dollar up right now. Oh, I would love to talk about the dollar in a little bit, but yeah, so I
Sure.
started about 15 and a half, 16 years old, writing covered calls on shares of IBM that I had, got curious about the markets. And, by the time I get to college, we're all doing different things for extra money or even to pay for college. I've
Right.
got buddies that are valeting cars or working,
Right.
summer jobs, and I'm trading from my dorm room and I'm skipping class. And my first semester of college, my GPA was not even a whole number. There was a decimal before there was a number.
Okay.
I was
Yeah.
literally flunking out of college because I'm sitting here thinking I'm making more than most of my professors. My mom, my Indian mother, did not
Yes.
like that. Did not care that I was making really good coin in
Did
college.
you
Said,
say,
you
honey,
gotta
get
finish
a
this.
real, did you say, my mom said this, honey, get a real job.
I think probably 10 or 15 years into this might have been after my
Oh,
first
you
book
lived
was.
through that too?
Oh my gosh, I think after my first 10 or 15 years, my first book was published, and she's still sort of hoping that I'm going to go to law school. And I'm like, no, mom,
Still,
I'm not.
still,
Because it's
yeah.
a secure job. It's a secure job.
Yeah, and you know what? Your mom and my mom wanted us to do the same thing. She
And I
wanted
can
me to be an
appreciate
attorney.
that.
Yeah.
I can appreciate that. So
Anyway, we
all of this,
argue cases now. Only we build our cases with markets, with different contingencies that build the case as an attorney would, with confluence and whatever you're using. I really think you have to have kind of like a background where you know how to build a case in the market to be compelled to take risk.
I think probably the few classes in college, which I did ultimately finish. I ended up double majoring in English and psychology, which was a real screw up because I had to get both the BA and the BS. But I realized that history, sociology,
Yeah.
served me far better than any kind of economic financial understanding of the market. And debate class was really good because one of my professors, he did a little trick on us. We were preparing for this debate, whatever the 1 week, 2 weeks preparation was. And when it was time, he said, great, now you're going to switch. And so if you were for, you were against, and vice versa. And so I realized, gosh, I wasn't prepared to make the other side of the argument. And when I started to think like the other side, my original argument got that much better. And I think
Right.
that really works for traders, right? We've got to, for a moment, before we hit that buy button, wonder what it is the person on the other side of the trade is seeing that we may not be seeing. So
Great point.
I agree with you, my friend.
Yeah, great point. Sometimes I look at the market, even when you have a position, and pretend you're flat, because once you're in, you kind of have, of course, you have a bias because you're assuming risk. But ask yourself if would you be long this market here or short if you were flat? And that also gives you an answer. And, you know, there's all kinds of little tricks. Like, you know, I've always had a hard time writing things to objectives, and someone gave me a tip and they said, Dale, well, when you look at the market and you're ready to ring the register prematurely, and I've overcome it with partials, but he said, do this. He said, before you're ready to take profits, ask yourself if you would reverse there. And if the answer is no, walk away.
That's a
Isn't that a
great way to
good
put
one?
it.
Huh?
That's great. I think I share something similar. You know, my idea is any profit target should be an obstacle, meaning there's that potential for sure. And so, for example, and I love that. That's a great way. It's darn near poetic. If I think a level could be where the market's going to stop and reverse, I want to be proactive about it, pay myself while I can, not when I have to. And, you know, and I never put initial profit targets at brand new highs. That's somehow telling the market it has to do something special for little
Yeah.
old me, for my position. And that's wonderful. That's a great way to put it.
Okay. Well, you wanted to talk about the dollars, so why don't we get to it? What time frame would you like me to put up here?
Sure. You know, the daily's fine. I
Daily? Okay.
most of my currency, most of my trading, it's interesting over the years, I used to look at multiple time frames, and now if I'm looking at one long term, a daily or a weekly, and one short term, maybe a 1 minute, 5 minute, or 15 minute, I'll pick one of each, and that's pretty much where I live. So I'm really short term,
Okay.
or I'll swing trade a longer term time frame, meaning I'll find a trend. And the dollar to me is, and I heard you guys talking about the dollar earlier before I came on, and you and Blake were talking about gold and silver and such. And to me, as a currency trader, to me, everything starts with central banks. The great Stan Druckenmiller said, look, all you macro folks out there, and I consider myself a macroeconomic fan, devotee, I'll make that part of my analysis. So look, the only thing you need to keep an eye on is what the central banks are doing. And he's right. You know, you can look at the stock market in the US and say the same thing. But when we macroeconomically started to spill into reflation, and that would have been easily Q3 of last year, and that even was probably a little late. But when we spilled into reflation, it's hard to not be a bear on the dollar. And yet, if you look at the dollar basket, the index, which I usually am
Yeah.
not a fan of. So let's jump on over. Dale, would you mind if we go to say look at the dollar Canada?
There you
So
go.
this is where Forex traders and currency traders, because I don't want to leave my futures currency folks out, but let's face it, Forex trading, that's the heart of currency trading. And what we know is, frankly, I don't give a rip where the US dollar is at, because it's diluted with, you know, the euro being what, 58%, and then a fairy dusting of everything else. If I want a pure look at the dollar from a macroeconomic reflationary standpoint, what is the greenback doing against calm dolls? And this is where, since Q3, Q4, I've just continued to press my advantage, mostly in the loonie. Once crude oil and lumber started going ballistic, I mean, we have parabolic moves in lumber. My best proxy for that as a currency trader is just like, just go take a look at what's going on with the loonie. Short the yen against it because the equity markets are up, and buy the dollar. I'm sorry, buy the Canadian dollar against the US dollar. And that's been probably my best position, because again, macroeconomically, where else am I going to go? That makes the most sense right now.
Okay, that's pretty interesting. We had a little bit of a sell-off in crude yesterday, and we haven't quite taken out the high of the move that we posted here. And Canada, to me, I'm getting a lot of non-confirmations on different time frames. Do you think we're due for some type of reaction, maybe back to the major breakdown here up towards 23, 24? Are we just going to keep melting under 120?
So if I'm going to look at what the dollar is going to do, and I heard you guys talking about the euro, you know, I'm long euro US. I just did that last week. The Canadian dollar position is about 6 months old. So, you know, if and when we revert, so I guess it depends on what the mean is, right? I think all of us can talk about mean reversions, but I guess it depends on what someone's mean actually is. You know, everyone's got a different, some people believe it's the 21, some people might look at a Fibonacci level. I'll look at the 34 EMA. So I'll look at the 34 EMA, and if, let's say we break the downtrend, which, let me pull this up on my screen here while I'm talking to you.
You could share it so we could see your chart.
Oh yeah, sure. Let me do that here.
Okay, so let me stop sharing.
Okay, yeah.
And then you could go ahead and take it. So
terrific.
Okay.
Go ahead and grab it.
Yeah.
All right. Nope, you're still sharing, my friend. We don't have to. It's okay. I don't want to.
All right. I want to see your I want to see your work. So
sure.
I'm just don't know how to do it. Okay. I'm not sure how to stop sharing.
That's okay. That's okay.
All
we'll
right.
just keep the combo going. That's all right.
All right. All right.
So,
all right.
So imagine, gang, if you want. Actually, since we're all on trading.
Oh, here it is. Stop
you
sharing.
got it? Oh,
got
sweet.
it.
Okay.
Think I'd know after a couple of years.
Oh gosh, you and I have probably over the years, Dale, how many platforms have you or Blake or I have to learn and present on? This is probably what, our 8th or 9th different platform over the decades.
Yeah. I mean, we've been in all kinds of rooms, starting
oh gosh, yeah. So anyway, yeah, we have to. You not only have to be traders, we have to be, technicians in a certain way with these technical.
Oh, they dragged me kicking and screaming into the 21st century. I'm still in the 1980s, and shed a tear for the trading pits all being closed. What a a great era that was, huh?
I'm going to sound like a heretic and possibly a jerk, because I'll tell you what, when I started trading. To me, good riddance. Good riddance.
Why? We got to steal from the public.
Never been a fan. I tell you what, this has been a long time coming. Exactly.
Yeah.
I admire the history of what the pits were. I'm sure I make a lot of folks. Oh, Rog, what are you talking about? It's the history of trading. Absolutely. But so was trading in a big field next to a big wall before it was Wall Street. When we're we're trying to get the red notes out, you want to go way back.
Yeah.
But it is a part of our history, but it really is history. And I'm surprised it took this long.
We had many black sheep. Yes,
go ahead. And I also am oddly, and this is a whole other conversation. I don't want to go into a whole other, but I'm oddly fascinated by the way in which the modern day trader is somehow still curious about what a floor trader would do. Because the truth of the matter is, and you could probably, and I've got buddies that'll admit the same, most of them couldn't make the leap to what your retail trader does.
Exactly. You know why? They made money off the paper. They didn't have to be directional. They didn't have to know where a market was going. All they did was, some were order fillers. Others just, they saw the paper and they just traded against the paper. So they didn't know how to.
It was a different kind of trading, to your point.
Yeah, you're right. Many could not reinvent themselves.
And I don't know that I would have been a great floor trader. So I'm not saying that I would have. I wouldn't have. I'm glad to be a back office trader. And when I have friends that have done both, it's tip my hat. But
I did both, Raghee, and I didn't like it. I dreamed of doing it because I came into the business as a runner. Making $80 a week, living at home, taking the L to the Merc. And, a lot of guys I went to college with, they were all set up with IMM seats and everything because they came from money. And it took me about 13 years to get back to become a member and, garner the resources to do it. And it was so anticlimactic. You kind of have a dream and it's driven by the ego that you don't want to be the low end of the caste system, just a runner. Oh, what do you do on the floor? Oh, I run. But it was so anticlimactic, and I found myself going back upstairs to trade during the day. And I also handed off my orders to a filling broker so I wouldn't have to worry about an out trade in the morning. And then after a few months, I said, especially during the winter, I was living in Marina City and it was 20 below, and I'd call the airport and say, get me out of here anywhere warm. And I was stuck. And I left on New Year's Eve doing donuts in my Trans Am on Lakeshore Drive trying to get back out west. So that was my floor trading experience. It
Oh
was
my
very
gosh.
anticlimactic. Yeah. It's
Oh
a
my
good
God.
story anyway.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there's
So
another
let's,
good story happened here on this Canadian dollar, and
all right.
this is my layout. So this is TradingView, as many of you know.
Yeah.
The volume profile on the right side is really of no use to us on this chart, but when I jump on over to futures and trade the 6C, then it's a little bit more helpful. But what I've got here is a simple zigzag tool because I look for a couple different types of patterns, and it just makes it easier for me to see if I've got the zigzag on there. But what I've got are my grab candles, a 34 EMA wave, and some Darvis levels. And by the way, all of these we've submitted to TradingView, and they're free. So I'm not trying to sell anybody any indicators. If you just look up simpler, there are 3 unlocked tools: Darvis, grab candles, propulsion, and you can put those on there. So
you coded those,
when I'm on,
Raghee?
Mhm.
You coded those?
Did I
And
code these?
yeah,
No,
you
I
came
didn't
up
code
with
those.
these? Oh,
I
okay.
had someone I have other stuff that I've coded, but I didn't code those. No,
Okay.
I didn't know how to use Pine Editor back in 2015, 16. I know how to use Pine Editor now, and I can code in
Wow.
Pine Editor, but not then.
What a Renaissance woman.
Necessity. I didn't want to
Yeah.
wait. I didn't want to wait on
Okay.
somebody.
All
Necessity and
right.
impatience.
Okay. So that's interesting. You're not the first person I heard about this 34-day EMA. So
So,
why did you come up with 34? What was
so
your
back,
reason for it?
sure. So back in, gosh, this would take me back to about maybe my last couple of years of college. So this would have been 92, 93, 1992, 1993. And by then, and also consider the context of when, this kind of goes back to the way that I started trading. When I was trading, there was no Amazon. There were no, tradersummit.com. There was no money show expos, none of that stuff. We didn't even have Borders, and, it was Walden Books, or it was your local library. We didn't have these big mega stores either. So getting your hands on trading books meant looking at the classics. It meant
Yeah.
reading Dow, Wyckoff, Schaubacher, and
Edwards and McGee.
those kind of things. And
Yeah.
frankly, I like Schaubacher better than Edwards and McGee and anyone who came after. I believe it was Edwards or McGee who was Schaubacher's nephew. So I'd go right to the
Okay.
source.
Yeah.
And that's where I started realizing there were things that these guys had already determined. You can even look at some of Dow theory. Dow theory was posthumously coined, but you look at some of Dow's early patterns and you can see shades of Fibonacci and even harmonics within them. So, I think when you go under the surface and realize the root of all this stuff, it's fantastic. Anyway, I started getting curious about Fibonacci numbers, and I started setting exponential moving averages. I started with simple because it was easy to calculate by hand back in those days. But I started setting my moving averages to Fibonacci numbers. And I started with as small as the 3. I went, 3, 8, 13, 21, 34,
Okay.
55, 89, 144, all the way to 1597 before I settled on the 34. So that would have been in the early 90s. And then by the mid to late 90s, well, now we've got the internet, and now we've got streaming data. I don't have to use my DTN dish anymore.
It was big.
Yeah.
It was the biggest dish. You could have had dinner on it.
Oh my gosh.
The whole family.
People were wondering what it was, because that was around the time that I got the DTN was around the time that DirecTV was just sort of coming out, getting there. They're like, what kind of TV is that? And I'm saying, it's not TV. It's how I get my overpriced data. And I think for a lot of folks, they don't realize, you and I were probably somewhere north of $1,500, $1,600 a month just to get data. And now most of it's free. So
yeah, I remember that. You'd pay exchange fees.
oh my gosh. And then the DTN fee and the equipment. So anyway, that 34 came from, just reading the classics, as far as I'm concerned, where everybody should start. And realizing, hey, let's throw some Fibonacci numbers on exponential moving averages. And I think that's a very popular thing. I mean, I certainly didn't start that, but I think a lot of traders said, look, 20, 50, 100, 200, they're great, but there's something magical about those Fibonacci numbers and exponential moving averages. And I just never looked back.
Okay. I know you were a fairly early adopter of Bitcoin. Did you have a tremendous year already, or a
Oh
decade?
gosh. So, I love when I'm talking to a group of, Forex traders, because I really believe if anybody understood crypto, it was currency traders. I used to call this digital Forex back in 2015, 2016, when it first came on the scene. I'm thinking this is
Yeah.
just another way of we've got currencies in the Forex world that we would never consider holding for great periods of time, because we know even certain currencies around the world, fiat currencies, have widely varying values week to week to week. So I think we're already used to some of these miners, or even sort of the miners, acting in a very
Altcoins.
volatile way.
Yeah.
So when
Yeah.
crypto
It's kind
came
of like
along,
rotation, you get rotation in equities in different sectors, and seems like everything came to life after Bitcoin put in a temporary top, that all that money flow from possible gains in Bitcoin just began to flow into some of these altcoins. Is
well, I
that the
think
way you saw it?
Actually, I have to give my nephew, I'm going to go way back because my Bitcoin journey started before the election.
Okay.
So my Bitcoin journey started in 2016.
Right.
And so for some folks who might remember, this is when Bitcoin started moving. The peso was moving too, and we were getting the debates between the then candidates. And
Okay.
right around that time as well, they were confiscating, and this is the dumb luck sometimes with which we are able to enter something we don't know. In 2016, they were actually confiscating rupee in India. And anyone from India probably remembers if they've got
Yeah.
families back there. And
Yeah. The
so,
high denominated notes. I kind of thought that when Modi did that, that it was a dress rehearsal for other democracies, or so-called democracies,
hmm,
to do the same thing, a war on cash, more control by the government. There's a war on cash now, and they even use COVID now. Who wants to touch paper that someone with COVID might have? So people are afraid of cash. They're definitely moving away from something that kind of gave you privacy,
well, I think what was really
right?
interesting is, yeah, I mean, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. For me, I'll tell you what, it was much more simple for me. My nephew said, "Look, I'm buying Bitcoin." I said, "Are you really?" I said, "Are your friends buying Bitcoin too?" And this
Yeah.
is this is going back to a trade that I made in the late '90s for the energy drinks. There was an energy
Oh
drink, and
yeah.
it started with an H. I think the name of the energy. It was before Red Bull. It was long before Red Bull, and I'm seeing all these kids with skinny little cans in their hands. Like, what are you drinking? And I went and I realized it was a publicly traded stock, and I bought it, and it went ballistic when I saw big lines at KKD.
Yeah.
So there's this observational part of trading and investing, which is really interesting to me. And
Yeah.
Bitcoin was just an extension of, wow, your friends are buying it too. Is this a big deal over there? And he says, yeah, with everybody I know, as they're confiscating, we're buying Bitcoin. I said, well, hell, I'm going to do it too. And my cost basis is between $400 and $500.
Nice.
So
What a great
that's
story.
where,
You you
but
you
it's jumped.
decided not to buy pizza with your coins at that point in time, right?
There's a great story
The
that the SPAC king Chamath Palihapitiya talks about, where he bought some property with however many thousand Bitcoins. And he says, I think that property is worth about $1 billion because he
Yeah.
did it back. So, who knows, right? My idea, though, when I bought it was, if this thing is mined, there's 21 million of them. It's like real estate. If you buy in an area where it's still under development, you at least hold until the area is developed, and then you see ultimately what the value of the area was. So I'm thinking, let this thing continue to be mined. Let there be
Right.
fewer and fewer coins. And then I decided that I would just hold them till they were all mined, until I realized that I won't be alive when that happens. But the idea was there.
Right.
Let me see what this can potentially
How
do.
did
And
how did you navigate the crash in 2018 from 18 to 3,000? Just hold on for
well,
dear life?
it's funny. This is what I love about TradingView. You can see my notes here. I wrote
Yeah.
58, 73, and 65, 64.50
Yeah.
in a separate account, because I didn't want to. The coins that I have that I bought in 2016 are in cold storage. So I just took
Okay.
those, especially in the wake of Mount Gox, which was happening around that time, early. I didn't want to be, subjected to
victim.
the nightmare stories. So in a separate account, in my Gemini account, I've got trades going on, but in my Coinbase account, I started buying on the way down. So I bought again at 58, I bought at 64, and I think I bought at 4. So I just bought.
Nice.
That's
I
it.
have a question from a listener. Paul Landon would like to know a few names of the classics, the books that you mentioned earlier.
Oh, I'm happy to. So, you know what? I'm going to grab on my laptop so I can walk over to. I would love to show you guys my bookshelf, but anyways, I'm going to walk over to my bookshelf here. So the classics would start with Technical Analysis and Stock Market Profits by Richard Schabacher.
Okay.
That is the first, the best. Everyone else has written that. And all due respect to everybody else, they've just rewritten that book. They've added extra stuff, but that was the first. I would also recommend, getting your hands on anything by Wyckoff, because I believe Wyckoff was a teenager when Charles Dow had his little newsletter, which would ultimately become the Wall Street Journal. So between Dow and Wyckoff, whichever one you resonate with, 6 of one, half dozen the other. I'm more of a Dow devotee. But either way, anything by them, and you can find a lot of that stuff online. Dow did not write books, but a lot of people wrote about Dow, and a simple Google search will keep you busy for hours reading interpretations of Dow theory. But what you need to take away from Dow theory, if you're interested, is the 4 phases or stages of the market. And also Dow is a big fan of volume, which, is a very
volume precedes price, all of that. Yeah. How do you spell the Richard's last name, the reader?
SCHABACKER.
You know what? The time just went too fast, Raghee.
No worries.
You know what? I'm going to get you into the regular rotation, so a year doesn't pass, because I forget after we do an interview, and then I see you on Twitter, and I go, "Gosh, I haven't talked to Raghee in such a long time. I'm going to get her on." And you always say, like Val Kilmer, "I'm your Huckleberry." From Wide Earp, and it's so much fun talking to you and insightful. And do you have any kind of business model where you're interested in people contacting you and possibly talking to you about what you do and how to keep in touch with your elite analysis, because you are one of the best?
Oh, I appreciate that. Like everybody else, I'm on Twitter. You can find me on YouTube. It's all Raghee Horner. And then I've got a free newsletter over at countdowntrader.com. And that's probably a great place. It's a free newsletter. And if there's anything that I am doing, it'll be through that Countdown Trader. But just take advantage of some of the free resources. I mean, believe me, in this day of modern marketing, if there's something that I'm going to do, it'll be out there at some point. But yeah, take advantage of all the free resources, and there are plenty of them. And then I also do a 20-minute pre-market show from 9 to 9:20 on YouTube called Charts and Coffee, which is just about to start. And that's about it, my friend. But I would definitely love to again. It's always great to hear your voice.
Okay, so my trading warrior sister, thank you so much. It was great laughing with you, and thank you for sharing your views, and stay safe. Are you inoculated, or are you an anti-vaxxer?
I'm a trader, which means we were well prepared for isolation long before COVID. So
all right. Okay. So I'm going to get a hold of you later on today, and we're going to book another date. And it was really a fun interview and a great interview, Raghee. Thanks for hanging out with us for a half an hour today.
I appreciate it. Thanks for letting me speak to the community. Everyone be good to each other.
And everyone's saying great interview. They're thanking you, and you could find her on Twitter at Raghee Horner, and go to her website. You're not going to regret having input from this pro. Okay, that's a wrap, everyone. See everyone tomorrow for the NFP. You could join the team for Morning Edge in 15 minutes. Adios. And remember, don't just, thank you, Raghee. And this was one. Don't just count your pips, count your blessings. Talking to Raghee today was definitely one for me today. Hope it was for you too. And we'll see everyone tomorrow. Adios.